Hello everybody, and this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions, bringing you another viewer cast. Today we're going to be looking at a PvZ submitted by LeeSinCity. Let's go ahead and get things started. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go through the early parts of this fairly quickly, because it's a very, very passive game, especially until it pretty much gets to the 15-ish minute mark. So we're going to kind of just walk through, take a look at the build, maybe talk a little bit about what can be improved or optimized on this build, and things to be leery of. So, going for a gateway expand type build, going for the gateway in the main base, definitely my preferred method of playing out the PvZ matchup currently. Going to be getting down his Cybernetics core and then going for his Zealot. Now, one thing right off the bat, when you're in the lower leagues and, you know, kind of getting yourself up to snuff, one of the things that you need to always pay attention to is when do I normally get pylon blocked, and how do I avoid it? In this case, you actually got pylon block after your first pylon. You didn't plant down the second one until a little bit later. Just one small note, you actually plant down the second pylon after getting your assimilator. Once you do that, you will have just enough minerals to get your cybernetics core without it being delayed at all. So, highly recommend working that into your build. Once the assimilator goes down, wait for that 100 minerals. You should have constant pro production through that, but wait for that 100 minerals, plant down your pylon, and then continue going on with your build. So, going to be continually chrono boosting out probes. Now, personally, I don't choose to ever... I start building the Zealot, but if I don't see anything, I just immediately cancel it, because I find it a lot easier to go straight into Warp Gate Research and the Mothership Core. The Mothership Core does a very, very good job of defending off any early link pressure, and in general, it's just a very safer option, in my opinion. So yeah, you're going to be getting out some more stuff, getting your third pylon down. Now, the third pylon is actually kind of a crucial pylon, because it dictates how you expand and how quickly you can expand. By planting this third pylon in the main base, you are basically saying, I'm not going to be walling off for a long time. Had that pylon gone down here, you could have come over here, waited until you had enough minerals to plant down your nexus, and then gone for your structures to start your wall off immediately. That tends to be a fairly safe thing to do. Especially in the lower leagues, you're going to see a lot of really, really funky builds. Some that might be just like all-ins, mass lings really, really early, and that type of style will help fend off against that. In this case, since it's a fairly passive game, you really don't need to worry about that too terribly much. So you are going ahead and getting your second gateway before you get your nexus, as well as your second assimilator. Personally, I don't think this build is very efficient, but in this situation, it actually turns out to be relatively okay, just because your opponent just sits back and macros the entire game, or for the good majority of the game. Now, at this point, if we look at your vision, we see that you have not scouted at all. This can be really, really scary situation for you, because without knowing what your opponent is doing, how do you know whatever it is you're building is going to be effective against what you're playing against? So, definitely need to incorporate a better scouting pattern. Get out a sentry a lot earlier. That way it can build up energy, and if need be, you can just throw down a hallucinated phoenix and go figure out what your opponent is doing, rather than just sitting back and hoping for the best. This game is a lot about understanding what your opponent's doing and being able to, you know, counteract whatever it is he's doing. So, Observer's actually going to be going across the field, and you get... as I hit the back button accidentally. You get not a whole lot of information. You don't see any units. You only see a handful of structures. You see this really weirdly placed hatchery. Now, it's kind of funny. This hatchery placement is actually very similar to the way that Root Fitzy played whenever he played Ling Ultra. He would get a really, really early macro hatch, and he'd put it kind of like as a wall for his natural. So kind of interesting that it's been a while since I've seen that kind of build, but anyways. So, at this point, you're on two bases, your army is fairly okay against what he's got. At this point, he doesn't have a whole lot. Now, at this point, if you were to simply walk across the field, you could probably immediately win. Reason why I say that, now, if we look at the units tab, you see he has 27 larvae, but the only thing at his disposal are lings. He doesn't have a roach warren, he doesn't have one building, he's on lair tech, and his upgrades, he's just now working on +1, and as we see, he is on 0-0. So, all you really need to do in this position is go attack. Now, the only problem is you have no idea what your opponent's doing, and as a function of that, you don't know that you can just go over and win. If you force him to make, you know, all, let's see, he would make 50, no, he'd make 64 lings with that larva. 64 lings, yeah, that's a lot of lings, but you just warp in a lot more zealots than you currently have, and your second Colossus is already on the way. That's game over. So this is why scouting is very, very crucial. If you had known this, you probably would have taken full advantage of it and just said, okay, I'm going to win. So definitely some things you need to be mindful of. Scouting is very, very, very crucial in this game. So, gonna get up more production. You go for a double robo, and on 2 base, double robo is actually very, very hard to sustain, especially with 6 gateways, just because you don't have the income to sustain double Colossus production as well as 6 gate production. So definitely gonna need to be looking to take a third relatively quickly if you're gonna go for the double robo facility. So you are gonna send out your observer. It's going to come in. It's going to see, wow, there's a lot of lings, and you should, in my opinion, you should feel comfortable enough to say, I'm just going to try and win this at this point. I mean, he doesn't really have that much, so you pretty much can just go ahead and go over and win. The biggest thing is his hive tech is on the way. Once his hive gets done and his Ultralix cavern gets done, this army is going to be very, very fragile. Ultralix versus this type of composition is very, very good. So definitely want to be thinking about going towards Starport, which actually I think you do here in a moment. But I think basically what this game boiled down to is you just decided you wanted to play passive, and which is fine, but you have to know when you have to figure out what your opponent's doing and get a better feel for, hey, can I go attack and win, or do I just need to sit back and continue to macro up to plus 200, 200. And that's kind of the biggest thing. Your pro production was really, really good in the early game. You're just now starting to get your upgrades going, so you're a little bit behind on the upgrades front, but overall I think you're doing pretty decent. I mean, look at the supplies, you're significantly higher than his, and you're actually starting to move out now. Biggest thing is at this point, his Ultralists are on the way, and he is just stalling with whatever he's got here in the front. So there really isn't that too much of an engagement here. Now, one thing I do want to look at, your mothership core is out on the field. Where is that at? Okay, so it is with your army. That's kind of interesting. So yeah, so you push back. I think he makes the comment, says, don't move out. So yeah, so you see the ultras, and you have a good idea what his composition is. And honestly, your composition isn't too bad. You're definitely looking very, very strong against what he has. The biggest thing that you need to worry about is a giant surround, because he surrounds you, and you're gonna definitely pay the price. Starting to get your void rays out, and honestly, in your position, you have done everything right up until this point. I really can't complain. There might be small little nitpicky things that I could talk about, but in your league, I'm not too terribly worried about it. Like I said, I think overall you're in a very, very good position. Now, one thing that I would recommend is at this point you need to start to think about taking a third. Your main is more or less mined out. or did I say third or fourth? You should start to think about taking a fourth. Your main is pretty much mined out, and you're going to want to be on at least 3 mining bases for the time being. So, you're already at your peak, supply cap, so definitely need to look at that. Now, I do find it a little odd that you send your mothership core over here and it just kind of gets left over there. Without that mothership core, this unit is actually super critical, because it determines whether or not you can get yourself out of a very sticky situation, which actually you're more or less just walking right into. So let's go ahead and slow this down and get into this. So you walk in, you take a lot of shots for free, and with all of these banelings finishing up, you definitely need to be backing off and not not do anything. Now, your mothership core is simply just sitting up here. It's not with your army, and that is a big mistake, because if anything goes wrong with this army and you lose it, you've got 6 gateways, one of which is not a warp gate yet, and your production is like, you should have, at this point, after being on 3 bases for this long and with this much bank, let's see, you can throw down 10 more gateways and still have 3,000 minerals. I mean, like, that gives you ample enough production to rebuild your army and get things rolling in case this army dies. So you got some not so well force fields, and he gets a really good surround. Actually, he doesn't. His surround doesn't really happen until after the Lings move in. Lings move in and just absolutely flood. Yeah, he just gets, his engagement is just absolutely killer right now. And this is where the mothership core kind of comes into play. If your mothership core is here, you can immediately recall back. The majority of his banelings are gone. You still have your army relatively intact, and things are looking really good for you. But he goes in, demolishes everything, and you're left with your void rays, which simply is not enough. So you're actually speeding up here. Basically, you just continue on producing units, and you just don't have enough production to deal with all of this. So I think overall, like I said, the early game and mid game were played out fairly well. Your late game engagement is kind of what lost you this game. And overall, I think it went fairly well. The lack of a 4th base was definitely a problem. And at this point, you're just going to walk into a bunch of Ling Hydra, and that is more or less going to be it, because he's got a bunch more stuff than you, and that is game. So, yeah, I think overall you need to watch your production. Make sure when you get to the late game, 10 gateways is not uncommon. Like, once you get to the point where you're fully maxed out, you're just throwing down gateways like left and right, because as long as you continue to expand and keep the resources coming in, sustaining on lots of gateways is very easy. So I hope you enjoyed the commentary as far as the overall analysis. If you've got any questions about anything that I said, feel free to leave comments below. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope you enjoyed this this viewer cast. If you would like to submit a replay to me, there's an email in the description you can send your replay to. Just give me a few bits of information, what you want me to take a look at, anything in particular you have, burning questions, whatever. So yeah, so feel free to send those replays to that email address. Also, if you want to see more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. I submit videos pretty much weekly, anywhere from 2 to 4 videos, whether it be my Bronze Masters League series or these viewer casts. So, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next game.